Well, hello and welcome back to another lesson. We have once again a great lesson. But before we begin, please allow me just a few moments to ask God to bless us as we study this lesson. Dear Lord, here we are once again, ready to share this lesson with others. Now, Lord, I pray and ask that you give us listening ears and a receiving heart and bless those that will be viewing this lesson, that they might be able to learn of you and share it with others. And Lord, we ask a special blessing upon the bereaved and the sick everywhere, Lord. Please have mercy on us all. And Lord, thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Well, like I said, we're back this week and we have a very interesting lesson. And I don't want to hold you too long. So we're going to jump right into our lesson so that you have time to enjoy this lesson as much as I did. So we're going to switch over. And as you can see, this is our last unit in this lesson, which is God's work through women and youth. This is Unit 2, and we're talking about young people of faith. This is Lesson 12, which we have one more lesson in this unit. And this is coming from the Gospel Union Press book. Our lesson for today is A Servant Girl Points Nahum to God. And this is our lesson text comes from 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 1 through 5, and then it skips down to verse 9 and through 15a. And the time is between 852 and 845 BC. The places of this lesson is Syria, Samaria, and the Jordan River. Okay. Our lesson outline comes from 2 Kings, the 14th verse. And again, I'll be using the New Living Translation. And it reads, So Nahum went down to the Jordan River, dipped himself 7 times as the man of God instructed him, and his skin became healthy as skin of a young child, and he was healed. All right. Here we have our lesson outline. We have 3 outlines. The first one is hurt pride, 2 Kings 5, 1 through 5. The second outline is angry pride, 2 Kings 5, 9 through 12. And then no pride, 2 Kings 5, verses 13 and 15a. Now, as I said, this lesson, we have one more lesson in this unit, and this one we're talking about youth. You're never too young to be able to witness to the for the Lord Himself, because God uses everybody to get His message over. Now, this lesson is pertaining to this man named Nahum, and he was a great commander in the Syrian army. He was one lesson called him a man of valor. So he was highly respected in his position. The king regarded him as a great leader, a great warrior. But Nahum had an issue with his health, and his health at that time was leprosy. And leprosy was a very contagious disease. It wasn't curable, but a lot of people that contacted or contracted this disease, it was like a flesh-eating type of disease. Somewhere I read where it was talking about it ate away at your fingernails, your hands, even your eyeballs, your hair. Eventually, the person would die. And during this time, when someone had leprosy, if according to where they were send them off to a leprosy column and just people stayed away from because of the fear that there was no cure for this. But now here's this great man, this great commander of such a large army of men had this disease, and he uh, kept it pretty much hid from the outside people, because back then they would cover everything up except their eyes, because they didn't want people to see these balls and sores and the rotting of flesh on people. So in this lesson, we're going to see how this young maidservant will play a major role in this man being healed through the power of a godly man. So let's switch over and read our first outline. And our first outline refers to hurt pride. Now it reads, and this is 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1 through 5. And again, this is the New Living Translation. And the first verse, it says, the king Haran had a great admiration for Nahum, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Ahiram great victories. But through Nahum was a mighty warrior who suffered from leprosy. At the time of the Armenian raiders had invaded the land of Israel, and among their captivities was a young girl who had been given to Nahum's wife as a maid. One day the girl said to her mistress, I wish my master would go to see the prophet in Samaria. He would heal him of his leprosy. So Nahum told the king what the young girl from Israel had said. Verse number 5, go and visit the prophet, the king of Aram told him. I will send a letter and introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. So Nahum started out carrying as gifts 700 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. Now, as I said, the lesson opens with about Nahum going to the king to get permission to travel to Israel. Now, keep in mind that they had been fighting with Israel's and fighting back and forth. And this king Aram was the king of Syria. So when this little girl that had been captured by the Syrian armies and taken away from her family, but this little girl had a lot of faith. Now, our lesson doesn't give us a name of the girl, but she told her mistress, who was Nahum's wife, that if he could just go see this man of God, that he would be healed. How many times have a small child said something or given you some type of information that was an eye-opener, that you were amazed that a child could have such wisdom? Well, in this case, he was the little girl had sympathy for him, because she, even though she had been captured and taken away, she still remembered her training and her faith in God. And as I said, Nahum was the commander of a great mighty man of valor. That means he had a great stature among all his warriors and all the head people of Syria. According to Jewish oral history, they think that Nahum may have been the one that shot the arrow and killed Ahab. Now, I couldn't figure out if that was find proof of that, but that's what one writer said. Although Nahum was a mighty man of valor, he had a disease that could not be cured. He was a leper. Like I said, during that time, that was a very contagious, nasty disease, because you had open sores that would be running, and people didn't want that to be on them because they didn't want that to be spread. But in this case, it goes to show us that even though this man was such a great man of mighty valor, he still contracted this disease. So then, like I said, but he was gone, he had leprosy. And it says the king of Aram had great admiration. The king admired him, and he wanted him to be healed. So he thought, that the Lord had given him Nahum, and he wanted Nahum to be around and to be healed. So look at verse 2. And at the same time, the Armenian riders invaded this land. This is where they captured this little girl that they had taken, and we don't know who her parents were or whatever, but evidently she had been raised up, and she saw the work of this prophet back in her homeland, and how he had such great faith that God used him to heal others, and she wanted him to get this same treatment. A lot of times when people do us wrong, we could care less whether they have more blessings or have more money. We want to ride on that they hurt us, and we don't want to do anything for them. But here's a little girl, a youth, like our lesson said, the faith of her. She went to her mistress, which was his wife, as I said, and told her about this man, the prophet that could heal her. And then look, so when the little girl went to him and spoke to him, I guess during the time when him and his wife was together, she let him know that there's someone that can cure you of your leprosy back in Israel and where she came from. Now, she didn't try to make a deal and say, well, I know someone that can heal you, but if you take me back, I'll introduce him to him. No, she was content in her position. She didn't try to get out of what she was, because see, she had been raised in a God-fearing home, and she didn't want to cause no problems on herself or anyone else. And so look what it says. So Nahum told the king what the little girl from Israel had said. All right, now remember that he was in good standing with the king. So the king told him, he says, go and visit the prophet. He says, but look, in the meantime, he says, I'm going to send you a letter to take to the king to introduce yourself, because he was going back into a territory where they had been fighting each other, and he didn't want anything to happen to Nahum. So he handwritten him a letter so that he could go and seek out this help from this prophet. So he does that. And then he says, I will send a letter of introduction for you to take to the king of Israel. Now remember, the king of Israel is not the prophet. He's just the king. But he wanted him to go visit this prophet. So he went through it like through protocol. He was going into this territory, into this land, and he wanted him to receive him in this land on a friendly basis so that he could get the help that he needed. And then he says, look, and then after he said, introductions for you to take to the king. So look what Nahum do. Now, he's a great man of valor. So he's figuring, well, let me take some money. Let me get some stuff together so I can, in other words, he thought maybe he could bribe him by giving him this, that the king would say, okay. And then when he get to see the prophet, he could, if he healed him, see, he really didn't know if he would heal him or not, but he figured if he did, I can present these gifts to him. Look how much he sent. So Nahum started out carrying as gifts of 170 pounds of silver, 150 pounds of gold, and 10 sets of clothing. So he went out and he brought he was going to give to him all this money and all this fine stuff so that he could make sure that he get cured. And then it says, after Nahum heard the young girls speaking about how Elijah could heal him, he went to the king. See, she told him about this prophet. The prophet was Elisha. So when he went there, then the king wrote the introduction, like I said, that's so it'd be safe for him to be in the presence of this king. And then, as we gonna see, something happens when he go to see this king. So now he's on his way. He's got all this money. I think I read somewhere where it says almost like $1 million worth of money in today that he was taking so that he could, in other words, since he had all this stature and all this money, he felt like he could pay his way and get what he wanted. But God, sometimes all God wants us to have is the faith of the size of a mustard seed, to believe that he can heal and that he will redeem us, get us out of our trouble, only if we have the faith. We don't have to pay God to get a blessing. God blesses us because he loves us. Okay, let's look at the second outline. Now we're talking about angry pride. Verse 9. So Nahum went with his horses and chariots and waited at the door of Elijah's house. But Elijah sent a messenger out to him with this message. He told him, "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored and you will be healed of your leprosy." But Nahum became angry and stalked away. "I thought he would certainly come out to meet me," he said. "I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy and call on the name of the Lord, his God, to heal me. Aren't the rivers of Damascus in Albany and Porphar better than any of the rivers in Israel? Why should I wash in them and be healed?" So Nahum returned and went away in a rage. Now, as we see here, we're talking about angry pride. Well, when he got to the town, he went to the king and he gave him the letter that his king had given him. But now when the king of Israel got the letter, he was just, he was, the king of Israel was, he was nervous. He didn't know what to do because he didn't know if this was a plot that to come in and take over his kingdom and wipe them all out. He was in fear and he didn't know what to do because after all, he couldn't cure this man of leprosy. So when he did all that, they say that this king of Israel, he was so upset and at wit's end, he didn't know what to do till he ripped his clothes. How many times have you been in a situation that you got so fretful or so discouraged that you didn't even think to call on the Lord at first? It was so much going on around you till you was caught up in yourself and didn't and failed to realize that, let me be still and know that God is with me, and pray and ask God to help you. Well, in this case, the king was just, he was just over, he was so just taken over by this letter till he ripped his clothes. And a sign of ripping clothes is like grief. You don't know what to do. He was just confused. So the king, when he received that, he was just out of done. Well, in the meantime, Elijah, the prophet, he get word of what the king has done. So the prophet, here's the prophet, he rebukes the king and he told him, he said, because the king had no relationship with God, y'all hear this, who can heal leprosy. And he rebuked him in a good way, and he let him know, don't do that, king. Don't, you're wrong. Come on, pull yourself together. And then Elijah asked the king to let Nahum come to him. During those days, the true prophet in Israel wasn't welcome in the palace. So see, he had to speak to him through somebody else, but he did still ask to allow Nahum to come to him so that he can be healed. Now, this is a true prophet. He wanted the man to be healed, but he didn't want his king to get all out of control and not know what's going on and then start panicking. So he asked him to let him come, and the king pulled himself together and he allowed Nahum to go and visit the prophet Elijah. And look what it says. It says, when he got there, when Nahum got there, Nahum was expecting Elijah himself to come out and wave his hands over. In other words, he had all these chariots of men with horses and all this stuff that he had. He thought that for sure he was going to come out and put on some big magical act in front of everybody. But no, Elijah didn't even come out to see him. He sent a messenger to him and gave him instructions of what to do. Well, when the messenger came out and told Nahum what to do, and he told him, he says, in other words, this is what the prophet said. Go and dip yourself, that's what the King James call it, in the Jordan River 7 times. And if you dip yourself 7 times, your skin will be restored like a young child. Well, Nahum was so angry and so upset, he went away angry. But guess what? A lot of times when God give us instructions and they're not the instructions that we want, we get upset with the Lord and we'll say, well, the Lord didn't answer me. He didn't, I wanted the Lord to do this. I wanted the Lord to rain down like, no. Sometimes God does things that are opposite of what you think they should be done because you are not God and he knows what's best. You pray for a healing, but the healing don't come overnight. It might take years, but in the meantime, he's still healing you. He's using you as an example for somebody else that might be going through a struggle, that God moves in his own time, at his own pace. And so when he got mad about this and his servants around him heard him, and he was like, he's acting like the Jordan River. Well, why I got to go to the Jordan? The Jordan River, he could at least come out and did all this and see, Nahum wanted a show put on. He wanted, since he was such this great man of valor, he wanted the crowd around to see this man wave his hands over and say he healed. And that brings me to this thought. We need to be very careful when we go and ask people to pray and lay hands on us. Are you expecting that person to heal you? Or are you expecting God to heal you? And because it doesn't matter where you are, you can pray to God for yourself, and God will hear and answer your prayer in his time. You don't need fake people coming in, laying hands on you, pushing you to the ground and telling you going to be healed, or telling you to bring me this much of money. Now you're going to be blessed. God going to bless you, your house with just as much as you give me. That's not how God works, you all. And this is part of how Nahum wanted this show to go over. And so he got mad. He was talking. He even talking about what river was better in Damascus than the river where he was told to go. It doesn't matter what river. When God gives you the instructions, if God tells you to go home and shower, that means go home and shower. He didn't tell you to go home and sit in the tub. He said go and shower. We need to follow God's instructions to the letter. And so when he was so upset and he did all that, and then he went to naming about how much better the rivers in Damascus was. Well, if the rivers in Damascus could have been powerful enough to heal him, why did he go trucking way back to Israel to get this done? No, his pride was hurt, and he forgot about his sickness. He's so mad and so put out till he walks away and he's grumbling and complaining. But then something happens. And when he go away in this rage, he didn't even think that this is what the man of God said do. That's because he didn't really have faith in God to believe that this was a true prophet. He wanted a prophet that would go out and make a show of everything. But Elisha was a true prophet. So now let's look at our last outline. This is very interesting. Then it's verses 13 to 15a. And it says, but one of his officers tried to reason with him. Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something very difficult, wouldn't you have done it? So you should certainly obey him when he says simply go and wash and be cured. So Nahum went down to the Jordan River and dipped himself 7 times as the man of God had instructed him. and his skin became as healthy as skin of a young child, and he was healed. Verse 15, then Nahum and his entire party went back to find the man of God. They stood before him, and Nahum said, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. Now you see, it took one of his closest officer. Sometimes we have people that are with us, that are around us, that know us and know how to talk to us reasonably when we get out of hand, and they'll try to reason with us and let us know, hey, wait a minute, you were wrong with that. Man, think about it. You blew all up for no reason. All you had to do was follow the instructions that was given to you. If the instructions didn't work, then we just travel and go on back home, or we go on and find the next cure. That's what today's true friend that have your best interest at heart. Now he's covered in these with leprosy, but this one officer reasoned with him, and he reasoned with him in a polite and easy manner. He said, if the prophet had told you to go out and do some great big task, you'd have done it. He said, so why not do this, just this one little simple thing, and that is to dip. In other words, go down in the water, come back up, go back down, and do it 7 times. He said, that's all the prophet told you, man. What you got to lose? That's how the word on the street. What you got to lose? Try it and see. If it work, it work. If it don't, well, it just don't work. So here we go with Nahum. He decides, well, I'm sick. These sores are getting worse. Well, I'll go ahead and give it a try. So what he did, he went and he did just as the prophet told him. So when he got there, he didn't dwell on which river was better in Damascus or none of that. He went on and he did exactly what Elijah told him. Before he did as Elijah told him, he was attacked by 2 enemies. First one, he let pride take over, that demanded Elijah to come out and see him. See, that's being prideful. He don't know who I am. He needs to come out and see me and do what I say, because I'm this and I'm that. Pride, they tell me in the Bible that pride cometh before destruction. And then his second enemy was evil questioning, when he had that nasty attitude about what to do. Why should he wash in the Jordan when he had better rivers in his own homeland? Better rivers. A river is a river, unless one's bigger than the other or moving swiftly. So see, he had 2 enemies that attacked him. But thank God for that one officer that was close enough to him and to convince him to do it. And it says, after Nahum dipped 7 times in the Jordan, his flesh became new, as a new babe. And then guess what he did? Can you imagine? You're sick and you go down in that river, and that river's got mud and all kind of other things, but the healing wasn't in the river. The healing was going and doing what the prophet had told him, and the prophet's instructions came from God. It was in the going that did the healing, not so much as the dipping in the water, but the doing what the prophet said. And then we see that when he did that and he came back up and his skin was smooth and wasn't no blemishes, wasn't no open sores, no nothing. His eyes was clear, his hair was back, and everything was in place. He gathered all of his chariots, his whole party. You see, he wanted that party to be on display. But in this case, he gathered them all up. And guess where he went? He went and stood outside of Elijah's house. He didn't go there beating on the door. He didn't go there demanding, you come out and you see me now. No, he didn't have no pride. He was humble. He remembered, and he took, it says Nahum and all of his aides and his other entourage, they went back, and he stood and he asked that Elijah come out. He didn't demand, he asked him to come out. And when Elijah, and he stood there, he wasn't on his chariot, he wasn't standing there with guards and stuff. He was standing on his feet, a cleansed man, and stood before Elijah and acknowledged that there was no God in all the earth like the God in Israel. And when Elijah heard him, and he came out and he let him talk. See, Elijah knew that if you just follow the instructions that the Lord give, life would be better. In this case, he was healed. And when he went there and he stood before him, he acknowledged. He didn't say that he actually believed that this God, but he believed that the God in Israel was better than all the other gods in the world. So that let me know he wasn't fully a total believer in the God of Israel, because they all had idol worshipers. But we know Elijah believed in the one and true God. The man was so convinced that God that the God Elijah represented was the true God. That means that there was no other God like the true God. And then in the end, it's not in our lesson, all that money and all that the silver and gold and all those clothes, he tried to present it to Elijah as a gift, but Elijah did not take it. How many of our religious leaders today, when you want a special blessing, they want you to pay them. You got to give me this, or they want you to contribute to this and contribute to that. But in this case, Elijah was a true prophet, man of God. He did not take none of that. He was so appreciative of the healer, Nahum, that he just wanted to give him something. But Elijah wasn't a false prophet. He didn't play a game and take those gifts. No, but Elijah did not accept anything. He told him, no, go on, go back and tell others how God has blessed you. He didn't want his money. I know a lot of our leaders today will want you to bring them this and bring them that so you can receive a blessing. Don't believe that. Believe that God will bless you according to your faith that you have in God. Like I said, whether it's a belief for a new car, a belief for a new home, a belief for a healing, a belief for your child, a belief for a loved one. If you pray and you pray right and you keep your faith, God will heal you. He will answer your prayer in his way, and you don't have to go give God no money. I read somewhere when one lady said, when was God ever broke? God is not broke. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. He owns everything. Even the things that you possess belong to God. So in this case, when you're in sickness or in dire need, have faith in God. Go to God in prayer. And if you have a prayer partner, get with them and pray that God will answer your prayer no matter what it is. Amen. So we can see here that pride don't get you anything but will destroy you in the end. And in this case, it all started with the little girl that we don't even know her name, but she directed him to the prophet of God, which was Elijah. And Elijah did just as God said. There is someone right now that you can direct to the prophet of God, to a true believer, or even you will be able to pray for them that God will answer their prayer. Amen. This wasn't a very long lesson, but I hope it's beneficial to you in your studies. And if it's been any kind of benefit for you, hit the little thumbs up button and then subscribe if you haven't, and then share it with someone else. We're here to just share the good news of the Lord. So until the next time, may God bless you richly. Amen.